I'm so excited for the show today because we have so much sound to get to. We have so much news to cover, but we also have a lot of great guests. My first guest right now is Chris Bedford from the Federalist. He's also a native of Massachusetts. I don't know if you guys know that, but Chris, thank you very much for joining the show.
It's great to be back.
All right, Chris, where I want to start, I think the biggest news of the day is Andrew Cuomo, but I think I want to start with D.C. because you're a D.C. guy. You've been seeing these insurrections daily at this point. And I wanted to ask you, what's going on there? What's the vibe when you walk down the street?
Yeah, I don't think people are quite around the country, and it's fortunate for them, are quite realizing what they're doing here in D.C. I live right now in the most paranoid city in America. People wear double masks when they're walking around outside, and there's barbed wire, there's concertina wire, there's police, there's National Guardsmen, there's armored vehicles, and there's 7-foot fencing all throughout my city. My street is cut in half by razor wire, 7-foot fencing, concrete barricades, and armed National Guardsmen, all of which are standing around, and they have been going through some terrible weather, the poor men and women who are stuck here as political props. They're standing around waiting for some kind of invisible army that Congress thinks is coming for them that's right across the Potomac River. None of it's happening. It's all just theater. And everyone here in my city, it's so sad, is so accepting of this. Like, well, of course they have to be here because they have to deter the evil, violent Trumpists who are coming to kill us all. It's completely insane.
Now, Chris, in one of your recent pieces, it's titled, "The Capitol Police Chief and Her Democratic Bosses Are Lying to You, All to Hold Our Capitol Hostage." You mention Chief Yogananda Pittman. Can you tell people about what she's doing? And you say she's perfectly content to use her own men and women as political pawns and scapegoats.
Yeah, absolutely, and she is. She's the acting police chief of the Capitol Police who stepped in after the last one resigned after the riots. Now, you hear Capitol Police, and you assume that this is an elite force, a group of people who are really well-trained, kind of like a Secret Service, able to defend the U.S. Capitol. But the reality is that the training standards and the leadership of the Capitol Police are so poor, and have been so poor for so long, that it's a place where a lot of people join before they transfer to a police department, but you have to retrain, even for a local police department. Your benefits don't transfer, for example. They're not treated the same because they don't have the same standards. It's a problem of leadership. Now, the leadership is also very unpopular with the rank and file, who are good men and women coming to work trying to defend the Capitol. But they're just trained to be essentially badge checkers and then political pawns. So when they were attacked on January 6th, and they had uncoordinated leadership, uncoordinated responses, poor fitness levels that showed in the time of crisis, their leadership called in the National Guard. Yesterday requested another 2-month extension of the National Guard based on an insurrection that never happened, based on random internet chatter, had been putting out statements to the press saying QAnon and some other conspiracy are coming out to get us based on intelligence reports. That our own FBI say there's no intelligence reports that indicate this. They're using the Capitol Police officers as a pawn and a scapegoat instead of trying to defend their men and women and make them into a better force.
I'm talking to Chris Bedford from the Federalist. And Chris, you make a really good comparison that I didn't think of, but you say it's what's happening with this, tomorrow might be the insurrection or the next day might be the insurrection. It's very similar to slowing the spread of this virus.
Yeah, the 2 weeks to slow the curve. We're approaching 1 year. I tell you what, I will be holding an illicit St. Patrick's Day party. It feels like we're almost in Ireland during the Troubles trying to get sneak past the soldiers and the razor wire with your Guinness just to drop it off in the alleyways. But we started off with a wall that came up. And all of this, by the way, was not because this was a riot that was out of control. It wasn't because this was a civil action that hasn't been seen, or an incivil action that hasn't been seen in other cities. It's all because of theater and because the police didn't respond correctly and reinforcements weren't called up earlier on January 6th. There was not enough crowd control measures. Then we got the massive fencing that's going across Independence Avenue, Maryland Avenue, Constitution Avenue, major arteries of D.C., and they extended 2 weeks. And then they said they wanted to wait till the inauguration was over, okay? And then they wanted to wait until the impeachment trial was over. And then they wanted to wait 2 more weeks just because QAnon, some guy in Indiana, was on the internet and said that he should go down to D.C. It's completely insane. And yesterday, I went down there. There was no one down there but reporters and joggers. The weather was mild. It was a nice day to be down there, a nice day for an insurrection. But there was no protesters, no rioters, no nothing like that, just media. And the same day, the chief of the Capitol Police said we need another 2 months of the National Guard occupying our city.
Yeah, and if you guys want to see, go to Chris Bedford's Twitter at CBedfordDC because he posts a lot of photos in DC and what's happening down there. Chris, my other question for you is about Andrew Cuomo, because a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this, you see a story and you start, going through the talking points, which is the media ignored this for so long. But what I like about your story, you say there's only one reason Democrats are turning on Cuomo, and it isn't a noble one. You go through why they're suddenly hopping on this sexual harassment, way of getting him out, and break down for people why you think people like Bill de Blasio and Nancy Pelosi are suddenly washing their hands clean of Andrew Cuomo.
Absolutely. He's a convenient sacrificial lamb. He's outlived his usefulness. Joe Biden made it into the White House. Everything is fine. The Democrats don't need him as much anymore. Also, he's a liability because Cuomo did on its face, incredibly stupid thing by transferring all of these COVID patients into the homes of the most vulnerable and not even allowing their families in to see it and then blaming everyone but himself. These are the kind of things that are trouble, but he's not the only one who's done this. The governor of New Jersey did this. The governor of Pennsylvania did this. Governor Whitmer over in Michigan has done this. There are huge amounts of deaths in these states in our elderly homes, and what the Democrats here are going to do is say, you know what, you guys are right. We need to have accountability. 1 year after this was reported by the Federalist, Fox News, the Daily Caller, other places, we need to have accountability. And Andrew Cuomo made young women feel uncomfortable in his office and harassed them. Therefore, we have to get rid of him. And I want to rewind that clock and say, wait a second, that's a problem. That's something that should be dealt with in a position of authority, especially one of public trust. But he covered up the deaths of 15,000 of his most vulnerable citizens. I actually think that's a bigger problem. And they're going to say, you know what, you're right. He's a bad sexual harasser. Let's get rid of him. And at the same time, they're going to have the Attorney General or some other Democrat in New York come in and take his place, just like he took the place of Eliot Spitzer when he took Governor Spitzer down when he was Attorney General.
Yeah, and I think you really put it well in this sentence. You say everything he is guilty of before accusations of sexual harassment, his former allies are also guilty of until now. And that's true. If this nursing home scandal becomes the focal point, then a lot of other governors are going to have to answer for, their own mishandlings of these situations.
They absolutely will, and we're seeing right now in Pennsylvania and some of the other states that have Republican legislatures, the beginnings of investigations of some of this stuff. In Pennsylvania, half of the deaths, for example, took place in nursing homes, and that same order was given out by Governor Wolf. A very, very stupid order, even at an early time when you and I didn't know that much about COVID yet. We knew that the elderly were vulnerable, and yet they still did this. And then if you go down to the White House, you see the person who headed the health department for Pennsylvania being nominated to head the Health and Human Services. These people are being covered for by the Biden White House, by Nancy Pelosi. Well, they just wash their hands of all their sins with Andrew Cuomo, the jerk from New York, that they can just get rid of now.
Exactly. And Chris, lastly, and I don't have a ton of time, but I will be reading your piece about Dr. Seuss in the next segment because I was really moved by it. Can you explain to people why you do think this Dr. Seuss thing is a big deal? There seems to be this desire from people like Brian Stelter to paint this as Republicans overreacting. But in your piece, you kind of break down why this is different from the other things they've canceled.
Absolutely. And they were saying Republicans were overreacting just the day before that these were all canceled, saying, listen, there is no ban. This is just conservative tripe. Well, it turns out there is a ban. Now you can't get it on Amazon. Now you can't get it on eBay. But what's weird about this is the attachment that these quote-unquote experts are doing. Dr. Seuss is something that unites us all. Every race, every income level, wherever you come from in the United States, people read it when they're learning to read. People read it at Christmas. People read him at graduation from high school or maybe from college. And they read them to their children. No child has ever gotten anything out of this but pure joy and happiness. and these fantastical pictures. To have these people go into our childhood memories, they lack so much joy themselves, nothing of that in their heart, and say this is hurtful to children. It's a lie, it's insidious, and it's stealing our ability to spread joy and tradition and what we grew up on with our children and our children's children.
Chris Bedford, thank you so much for joining the show. You can follow him, guys, on Twitter at CBedfordDC, and make sure you check out his stuff at the Federalist. Chris, I'm going to read this entire, well, maybe not the entire thing, but I'm going to read a lot of the pieces from your Dr. Seuss story because I do think you hit the nail on the head. It's these experts, and I laugh when I hear that because these experts they're just fun suckers. They ruin everything. And like you point out, they literally steal Christmas. So it makes sense they're trying to cancel.
They're literally the Grinch that stole Christmas. And I'm glad you're reading that up there in New England because I have a lot of memories from growing up in Belmont in there.
Yeah, this is a great piece, and I'll tweet it out. Chris Bedford, thank you for joining us. We love hearing what's going on in D.C. And enjoy your St. Patrick's Day party. I wish I could be there.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
All right, guys. Well, if you haven't tried Super Beets Heart Chews, you are missing out. I love Super Beets Heart Chews. They taste great. I'm so sad. I have my empty bag right here. I'm going to call Howie and say, can you order us some more, please? Super Beets Heart Chews combine non-GMO beets with a powerful new ingredient, grape seed extract. The grape seed extract used in Super Beets Heart Chews has been clinically shown to be 2 times as effective at supporting normal blood pressure rather than a healthy lifestyle alone. Better blood pressure means more energy, the way nature intended, without the jittery caffeine or stimulants. And sometimes that happens if you have your second cup of coffee in the afternoon to get through that little lag, and you don't feel great after. You get a little anxious and you feel a little bit wound up. Well, now all you have to do is take 2 delicious chews a day, anytime, anywhere, to get the blood pressure support you need. Do what I did, support your heart health with delicious Super Beets Chews. Get your Super Beets Chews today at getsuperbeets.com/grace. When you buy 2 bags, they'll throw in a 3rd for free, which is a great deal. We need a few new bags here. I think that everyone's been coming in to the studio and stealing mine. Getsuperbeets.com/grace. That's getsuperbeets.com/grace. We'll be back on the other side, guys. We'll open up the phone lines, and I'm going to read you the piece on Dr. Seuss. The experts have finally come for Dr. Seuss, and Chris Bedford is not happy about it. We'll be back. This is The Grace Curley Show.
You're listening to The Grace Curley Show.